So we're going to first off talk about identifying your skills. And this is one that we often overlook when we begin thinking of what our career goals and where we should calibrate those goals, where that should go. So we're going to be talking the first part about identifying the skills, knowing their importance, being able to identify the ones that are the most marketable and the ones that you can bring to bear for your career aspirations. So the first thing I want to do is surprise pop quiz. I did warn you that there would be some interaction with the chat, and here we go. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions, and you can just pop them in the chat. You don't have to, but if you would like to, I would appreciate it if you could pop that in the chat. So we're going to have some questions here, and so the first one is, what is a skill? If you have a quick definition, what would you call a skill as a definition of what is that? And think broadly. That's a hint. hmm I like what I'm seeing in the chat. Yes, yes. You guys are you guys ate your Wheaties this morning. I love it. So basically, the way we define a skill, it's anything you can do, any type of ability or aptitude that you can accomplish. That is a skill. And a lot of times we don't always appreciate all of the things we can do. So think broadly. You have a lot of skills. It's going to be a hint for one of these questions. Now, how many skills does the average person have? Now, when I say the average person, I mean you and me, just the people who are here. How many skills do you think each person has? But the answers are varying widely. I will tell you, some of you are spot on and some of you are lowballing it a little bit. Let me tell you that the average person has between 500 and 800 skills. And we're going to talk, that seems like a daunting number, like, oh my gosh, how could that possibly be? But I'm going to talk about where you attain these skills in just a moment. So, but you have a lot of skills that you can bring to bear on your job search. So don't underestimate yourself. Now, how many skills do you think the average person can identify? Oh, some of you are spot on. Some of you are very, very spot on today. Great, great. So some of you are saying, 20 or 5 or 15. Um, the answer is 10. Typically, most people, yes, Pam, spot on, you got it, 10. Exactly how many you can is about that. When we go to rank the skills that we have, particularly that are germane to our job search, it's around 10, which of course is far lower than what we actually have. But more to the point, what percent of people can't identify, sell, or demonstrate or prove their skills during an interview? It's kind of all over the place. Jason, Sanjay, you nailed it. It is 80%. 80% of people cannot fully identify or sell or demonstrate their skills during an interview for a whole host of reasons, but it's around 80%, which is pretty remarkable. Now, I promise I'm going to stop giving you all these questions during this pop quiz very soon, but I've got another one for you. So let's go to the next slide. So, um, out of these, which do you where do you think skills are developed? Is it through work experience, education, volunteer work, socialization, hobbies, sports, or all of the above? Yep, you guys got it. We yep, it's all of the above. Your skills aren't simply derived from just the work you've done or the educational attainment you have. They can be done through volunteer experiences with organizations that you care about. It can be through hobbies that you enjoy. It can be intramural sports that you participate in. Any of those can help you develop skills. both specific as well as generalized. So keep in mind that skills are not just kind of what we think of our where our work history was or where we went to school. It's pretty broad. Now, what skills are the most to employers? So this, you don't necessarily have to try to guess a specific thing, but I'm going to tell you what it is. So the types of skills that employers really look for, and I'll tell you this when I interact with our employers, at least in my region of Minnesota, and I'm willing to bet yours as well, are these. First one is soft skills. Soft skills, yep. Nathan, I see you got it. Colleen, you got it. Soft skills, people skills. Will you fit in? And can you adapt? Can you learn? And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of each one of these, but all three of these are germane to your job search because when you're being read for a job through a resume and then when you're sitting down for a job interview, these are really critical. Soft skills, people skills are ones that are really hard to teach long term. And so they're really looking if you've got that. Will you fit in is a question that you will get asked because they just want to make sure that the current team they have, you're going to complement that team. You're going to accentuate their strengths, and you're going to be a good addition and asset to that office, wherever that is. And are you adaptable or can you learn the job? Very rarely is it a one-to-one type of job. I'll just give myself as an example. When I came from Career Force, I came from higher education. I hadn't worked at a career force before, but I had a lot of the skills that were desirable in this kind of function. And so being able to adapt and learn, because not all jobs are one-to-one, is really important for an employer to see because you're going to have to grow and stretch on almost every new job you have. Now, let's talk about how identifying your skills is going to help you in the job search. So there are a few different ways. The first is it's going to prove your abilities to potential employers. And when I say prove your abilities, it's going to be able to showcase what you're able to do on day one. After you found where the coffee pot is, where the restrooms are, you're able to go right into that work. And they want to be able to know that you are able to hit the ground running on day one. So that's a big part of being able to show and showcase all of your skills. It helps you write a really compelling application or a resume that really gets attention. I will tell you right now, and you probably know this, but writing a really effective resume is not easy. It's actually very difficult until you're really in the thick of it to write that kind of really strong, compelling resume. So identifying your skills is really going to help you to know what to put forward, what to accentuate on your resume so that it really grabs attention, and how to make sure that who's ever reading your resume really focuses in on you and thinks to them, I need to talk to this person. And then selling your qualifications in an interview. It won't come as any surprise to anybody that no employer is going to hire off of just a resume. They may make the decision to interview you based on your resume, of course, or the application you submit. But in the interview is where they're going to decide if you are the correct candidate for the role. And that's really important because you've really going to probably just get one. Some places have different rounds of interviews, but you won't get to the next round of the interview unless you sell yourself really properly and all of your skills you can bring to bear in that first interview. So that's really critical as you think about what kinds of skills that you want to showcase for employers. Now, when I talk about skills with customers, I talk about a few different kinds of skills, and as you can see, sort of in this Venn diagram, the job skills are like hard, specific skills related to the job. So a good example, think of a welder. if you will, and a welder who knows how to read blueprint, knows how to interpret weld symbols, knows how to do stick welding or TIG welding, those types of things. Those are very specific to the job, right? They're ones that, I could do like one of those four things. So I wouldn't have, so if I wanted to go into welder, I would need more training, but those are the hard skills that somebody would have specific to a profession. The second are the soft skills. Now, yes, Elaine, you don't see soft skills on job postings very often, but I will tell you that they are critically important to note because they're really hard to train or teach or instruct. Those are sort of the self-regulation kind of things, like making sure you're reliable, having good attention to detail, being able to work independently. Those are those soft skills, and those can be truly, truly critical for demonstrating that you are a cut above the rest. And so really thinking about how your soft skills can bring to bear. And then transferable skills. So there are certain transferable skills that you can move between different jobs. So I'll use myself as a good example. Before I came to CareerForce, I was in higher education. Part of my job was to do career counseling and to work and give speeches to different types of groups who were in different kinds of clubs or different activities and demonstrate kind of the types of things that they needed to know to be successful. And so that's a transferable skill, the speaking, the presentation, those types of things. It's not a one-to-one, but it is something that transfers from job to job. So something to think about as the three different kinds of skills you're going to bring to bear. So let me just reflect on this quote from Bill Gates. I think we all know who Bill Gates is. My people have the confidence of their convictions and they know your skills. As you think about your skills, don't limit yourself. Because if there's one thing I see with a lot of customers, they've been in, let's say, a career for a long time. They think that's the only job they can have. That's the only career they're fit for. And once I actually ask them to brainstorm, what are your skills? What are the things you can bring to bear to a new job? It's remarkable how many more skills they have. And then also asking, how can I demonstrate it? How can I showcase it? Some jobs, like in welding, you demonstrate. You're actually taken into a lab and you're asked to weld something, and they'll look at it. Most jobs won't be quite that hands-on when they ask you to demonstrate. So thinking of how you can showcase that, whether that is through references, whether that is through any types of metrics you can put on your resume that show that you have done those things and have those skills. So think about those. A few things to think about. Write down employment related activity that you've had, not just what you were responsible for, but all the things you did, because I'm sure that if you think about the jobs you had, there's a lot more that goes into any job that you've had than just kind of what was presented to you as a job description. List the tasks that you had to do in performing activities, and then list the skills that you needed to have to get that work done. And then network with people that you know, people that can serve as references, and ask them, what are other skills you've seen in me? That can really help clarify it when someone is looking at you from an external perspective and say, oh, you have this, you really have great conflict resolution skills. I don't know if you know that, but you do. And you might think, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. I just thought it was just helping people get along. That's a very important skill. So thinking about where you can look at for different types of skills is going to absolutely help you. All right. Okay. So I'm going to take a bit of a break. Three types of skills, as we talked about: soft skills, the hard skills, and the transferable skills. Understanding your importance of those skills and knowing how to identify your skills. Those are all really important. So, Lana, do we have any questions from the chat right now? Or this would be a good time to ask because we're going to get into some more meaty stuff in just a moment.
None at this time.
Great. Oh, well, you guys are being easy on me. That's wonderful, but we will have more time for questions. So let's move on because it's not just about identifying your skills, but also proving it. And we're going to talk about that next. So when we're looking at applications, you're going to find that no matter what you have on your resume or your cover letter, a lot of places will still ask you to step through their application, often online, And to be honest with you, now it's almost exclusively online. And they're going to want to have some information. So before you start that, have your work history available. Maybe that's on your resume. Excellent. Maybe it's not. Make sure it's on the resume, but make sure that you have that. Always be honest and be positive when you are filling out an application. When I do different creative job searches, I'm just going to tell you something that I say in that, and I'll say it to everybody here today. Positivity attracts, negativity distracts. I'm going to say it one more time for emphasis. Positivity attracts, negativity distracts. So an application that is written in a positive but honest manner is always going to be more appealing to someone who's reading it, whether that's a hiring manager, an HR professional, a member of a search committee. You really want that. Be complete, because gaps in work history can sometimes be snagged by the filtering software that company might be using. So big gaps on a resume can do that. Or if you forget, something that can be an issue. Make sure that you are looking at it as if you're putting your resume together for a job application. You want it to be of the highest quality, and you want to use the space wisely. A lot of times applications will have word limits. So when you have to add information in there, you will need to be very careful about what you put in. You may be limited to, let's say, 300 words in a box. You need to be very concise there and make sure that you're putting the most important skills that you can bring to bear for that particular job in there, because other stuff won't have an impact. And then, of course, follow directions. You really want to make sure that you are checking off all the boxes, because anything that's missing, so for instance, if they ask for a cover letter and you forget to attach it, that can just disqualify you. If they ask you to supply something with 3 or 5 or 2 references, whatever, and you don't do that, that can be an issue. Make sure that your information is all complete. So if you put reference people in there, make sure you have the correct emails and phone numbers for them, all of those things. Be very, very wise with that, because that might be the only thing that a hiring manager looks at. They may not even look at the resume. They get an application and they consider the application. They don't even look at any supplementary materials. That's what they get. So just be aware of that. They may ask for salary. So just as an FYI, and I could be here for 2 and 3 hours talking about how to talk about salary. We have other creative job searches for that, just FYI. But just be aware that they may ask you for salary history as well. Make sure you are honest on your salary history if they do ask for that. Fewer and fewer companies are asking for that on an application. They usually are now asking for it in an interview, which is about your salary expectations, but right now they still may have that. Go to our next slide. There we go. Now, a little proofreading exercise, everybody. I'm going to give you just a few seconds, but I want you to count in this block quote, how many letter F's are there? F is in Foxtrot. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to count, and I'm going to ask you to put your answer in the chat. Time's up. Okay. Guess what? There are 6. I have our chat up. Yes, there are 6. I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you why. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So a lot of you missed the 3 ofs. And that's something very, very simple, but it's very easy to overlook. And so again, really be very careful when you're proofreading your applications and resume materials. My goodness, I know I have done that mistake before on resumes, and so all of us are going to have that. So make sure you're proofreading. Everything you're looking at. Be very careful, because different little areas can be enough to say, bad attention to detail, maybe I'll move on with somebody else, maybe I'll interview this person instead. So make sure that you're proofreading. One of the biggest questions that you're going to confront is, why did you leave your last job, or something like that, especially when it was not a voluntary one, or if it was not, you didn't part on, let's say, the best terms, shall I say. So the way that you want to make sure is talking about an involuntary separation, whether it was a layoff because a company was reorging or downsizing, if the position was seasonal, if the position was created, if the position was made redundant through, a reorganization. Those are all things that happen to you. That's not your choice. Your choice would be to, if you had resigned, or saying it was a voluntary situation, try to avoid the word fired and try to avoid the word quit. And putting things like illness or personal reasons, that's kind of vague, so people may not understand what that means. You don't have to go into great detail about why, but simply saying this is fine enough. You don't have to open up every aspect of your life on a job application, but you do want to make sure that you avoid certain words that have a negative connotation, because remember what I said earlier, positivity attracts, negativity distracts. So you really want to be aware of that. Okay, so let's talk about kind of work portfolios and how to present your materials. What I usually say for everyone, and this is not simply for, let's say, creative professionals, for whom, they would normally have, let's say, a binder or portfolio or an online platform like a website. This is something everybody is going to need at some point. Obviously, the resume. Again, I could spend another 2 hours just talking about resumes, but we do have a creative job search on that, and I really recommend that everybody look into the resume workshop, that, and also some help at your local career force for resume writing. I do that all the time. It's really helpful to clarify a resume as well. So cover letter, it's becoming less prevalent, but there is still often a lot of jobs that ask you for at least a cover sheet or a cover letter that will help summarize what you're all about. A reference sheet, that's just a sheet that has your references on it, that they can look at, or that you can draw from when you have to input them into an application. It's unlikely you'll remember all of your references, their phone numbers, their emails, their titles, especially if they have moved to a different location or a different place of work as well. So have that. A letter of recommendation or two never hurt. Having reference letters or recommendation letters is always good to have. Work samples, there's something to think about when you do work samples, especially for creative professionals in the room today. You know all about that, but some work samples can be things like pictures or those types of things. They can be, things you've welded. They can be those types of things. And then any licenses or certifications that you have. So just to show that, let's say if you say that your commercial driver's license is valid and you have a hazmat certification, we can see that. So you bring that with you just to make sure, because they may want a copy of it just to make sure that you are truly licensed to, let's say, drive a truck with ammonia in it or fertilizer, to make sure that you're able to do that. So those are always good to have, like in a binder, in a folder, whatever you need is something that I would really think about. Lana, were there any questions so far?
Yes, there's a couple of different questions. The
Okay,
first question was how long it was in reference to the gap. So how long you
sure.
determine it's a long gap?
Sure. So there's a couple different things to think about with that. The first is when filtering software, like an applicant tracking software, is looking at it. Sometimes they're calibrated to 3 months. Sometimes they're calibrated to 6 months, and those gaps can be looked at as enough to move that application or resume to the side, so it can do that. What I usually say is it is very rare that for those 3 months or 6 months you were doing nothing. Um, and so you were doing something, so if you were, for instance, taking care of a spouse who was sick, or a child or a sibling or a parent, and giving dependent care, mark that on your resume. That were skills you developed, and that was real work. So make sure that's on there. You don't have to go again into deep, deep detail. But you do want to make sure that you have, that documented. So that's kind of what I would say to that. Um, Anything else?
Yeah,
Uh,
there's another. There's I think two more, maybe three. The one
sure.
person says, "Is there a benefit to have a company's AI program view your resume?"
So, what I would say is be careful with how AIs do things. Applicant tracking software isn't really artificial intelligence or a large language model. Applicant tracking softwares don't exercise discernment, and so they will just compare things. So, what we might want to do, Lana, is put the jobscan.co link in the chat for people. That is what I would use. And I think you get 1 or 2 scans for free. You can sign up for a free trial for 2 weeks and just see. But the most important thing with that is it will give you an insight into what those applicant tracking softwares use when they are scanning your resume. And they can give you a sense of how much of a percentage match you are. And so that can help you a great deal. And you will actually see the percentage of how much kind of connect with the job posting. I did it once just for fun, to see what was where I was at. It was humbling to see how far off I was from a job I was interested in when I used JobScan. And so that can really help you tighten up your portfolio, especially for companies that are using applicant tracking softwares. And I would say, we're seeing even large and medium-sized companies turn to those types of platforms to help sort and manage their flow of applicants. So think about bookmarking that jobscan.co that Lana just placed in our chat. And so we've got that. I see one here. I just pulled it up. So, can we contact your previous employer? That's different. That's a different. Yep. So, the, be careful how you answer that. It really depends on the circumstances in which you left. And so, if it's a way that you can make sure that you know what they're going to say, great. But I just buyer beware on that one. So. Um, what other questions?
There's another question about what did you do about a gap in employment due to, they said, to prison or treatment or something
Sure,
that you don't
sure.
want to disclose.
Yep. So typically when I say if there's a large gap, I usually say you need some more TLC than I can kind of provide in this. Make an appointment with your local career force, and we can do a resume review for you to try and create a resume review that may be more functional in nature, that can highlight what your skills are rather than your job history. Now, no resume will paper over like years worth of gaps, but it can draw people's attention more to what you are able to bring to bear rather than just the list of jobs that you've had in the past, or your job history. So when you have that, definitely make an appointment at your local career force for a resume review, and we can do a one-on-one with you about whatever that was. And of course, the conversations you have with career force, job counselors like myself, those are private, so we're not sharing that with anybody else. So you can bring that.
And then this is the last question so far, unless I missed something,
No, that's
um, which I know I didn't. Someone said, oh, somebody put a new one in there. But the last question that I saw was, do you list all or just relevant certifications?
So usually what I will say, list the ones that touch the core competencies of the job to which you're applying. And why I say that is, when people look at a resume, they're not going to spend a lot of time looking at it before they make a decision on whether they want to continue to read it more closely and then consider you for an interview, or maybe just skim it. So stuff that is not related to the core competencies, I would say would be safe to leave off. So a good example is if you're applying for a commercial truck driver, saying that you're a deacon at church, that's all well and good, but that's not necessarily touching on, your ability to, get a hazmat endorsement for that so that you can have this job. So something to just consider, is it should touch on the core competencies of the job that you're applying.
Okay. And there's one more question and I'm done.
No,
I
we're
don't
good.
see anybody.
No, that's what we're here for.
It says, in regards to the gap in work, do you suggest taking any job in the time being or wait for the job that's of interest and within your pay range? Let's see.
That's such a personal question. My typical response is don't undersell yourself and make sure that it's a job that you are, really wanting. But also, you also have to think of the fact that it's not just a employment, an employment gap on your resume you're trying to avoid. You want to work and you want to earn an income and have a livelihood. So that's a really that's a personal question. It really depends on the kind of job you're interested in. So, and if it aligns with any of the work, if it even to some degree aligns with your ultimate goals, I would say consider carefully. Okay. Great. All right. We will have more time at the end. So just FYI, don't worry. We've still got some stuff to get through, and I'm sure you'll have more questions. So there'll be more. Let's keep going. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about branding and consistency. So I want you to just consider this resume here by Mr. John Smith. Okay. You can see, it's clean, it's nice. And you can see the experience, the qualification summary. There's all the, different kinds of contact information that's on there. His LinkedIn profile is up there. All that's there. Great. Great to look at.
Jason,
Yeah,
are you able to make that any larger?
I let me see if I can. I wonder if I can zoom in. How's that? See,
Excellent. Thank you.
okay, and fair warning, I may have to zoom out to give you the other side of the screen, just FYI. But that's this resume. So you can see, it's a well thought out resume. It has, it has the employment history and the dates. It has proficiencies. Again, it has all that contact information that you want to see, and that's exactly what you want to put forward. But when we talk about branding, we don't just talk about, you think about branding as being, like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or something like that. But branding isn't just about selling you a soft drink or anything like that. It's also about, putting yourself in the best light possible. So, that's also a branding question for you because you are your brand. There's no other brand to sell more important than your own brand. But I want you to just take a look. I'm going to zoom out in just a moment and I'm going to show you something else here. So now I'm going to show you a cover letter. Now, I'm going to zoom into that cover letter and now you can see that this is sort of a quick cover letter that describes a conversation and then sends an application in to the job. Now, as you can see, this is a serif font, so this has a little, it's a little easier to read with the serifs at the end. But if I move out, I just want you to take a look. Note that in this resume, this is a sans serif font, so this is a different font, right? Yes, it looks cleaner, it looks a little more business-like, it looks good, but it is not the same. And so it will look a little different. So let me zoom out. Now, take a look. Do you see the difference? Let me zoom in. And you can see the branding is now the same. The fonts now align. The header on the top matches what's on the resume, and it's all one consistent look. It is always going to be more visually appealing to a reader to see that kind of consistency, because again, it shows attention to detail, and it shows a sense of putting yourself in the best foot forward. And so they are seeing, again, your email, your LinkedIn profile, your phone number over more than one place. So branding is really a critical thing to think about. And I want you to, I'm going to just zoom out one more time. I'm going to just go back and I want to show that one more time, the difference. That's one cover letter. That's the other. And so you can really get a sense of how visually appealing it is. So that's just something to think about. So now I know that there's going to be more questions just from that. So, okay, fire away. We've got a little bit of time, so let's talk.
Okay, it looks like I'm gonna start right here. So
Nope,
the one
that's
person is asking does the employment history does the employment history go too far back?
yeah, they're probably asking. I think that's what they're asking is it possible to go too far back in terms of your employment history?
Mhm.
Typically what I say is, first, just FYI, if you lined up 10 different people, you probably would have 10 different opinions on that. My personal view, when I've been on the other side of the table, looking to hire people or considering screening people to be hired, is typically once we got past about 15 years, the stuff after about 15 years probably is less impactful than what you've been doing recently, because we all have skills that we brandish at our jobs now, and then skills that maybe we haven't used as often in jobs, multiple years in the past. So I usually say a rule of thumb for that is around 15 years is a good place to break it off, unless there's a job that you had that is truly bearing on this next job that you are interested in, and you really want to highlight that you've done that job in the past. If it is a job that has direct bearing on the new job that you're applying for, and it was 17 years ago, for instance, include it, because that will have an effect.
Okay, so this next question is saying, is there any benefits to signing up with LinkedIn? So I'm not sure if they mean signing up for
Ye-
free or signing up for pay. So
So I
maybe
would,
that's both.
yeah, let me talk a little bit about that. LinkedIn is a free service, but you can get a sort of a premium subscription. I think it's like 29.99 or something like that a month. It can be more helpful to have a LinkedIn Premium subscription, but you do not need to pay that in order to have a LinkedIn profile that really gets people's attention. I really would emphasize to go and subscribe or register for the Creative Job Search that is dealing with social media and LinkedIn. That's going to address how to really polish up a profile and make sure that it really is appealing and can get noticed. I will first off say different professions may find it easier with a LinkedIn Premium than other professions. So it may not necessarily be the case for every single person in every single career field. So there may not be a hard and fast rule, but definitely sign up for that Creative Job Search, social media, and LinkedIn, and that's going to give you the whole lowdown on what to do with your LinkedIn page.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the next question says, I was advised to change from skill-based to time-based. Your sample is skill-based. What is the
Mhm.
true preference these days?
Yeah. So, like I said, there'd be about 10 different people. I usually say chronological ones are the rule of thumb. Those are the ones that HR managers are particularly used to reading. So try, if you can, a chronological one is more common and will be more closely understood than a functional one. A functional one is there because you want to really put what your capabilities are in the best foot forward, because you may have had something in your past that you want to move to the side and you want to focus on the future. So I would typically say, if you have the ability to do a chronological resume, go for a chronological resume if possible.
Thank you. The next question is Times Roman the business standard?
Yeah, Times New Roman or Calibri is typically what I say to use for a couple reasons. One is applicant tracking softwares have an easier time of scanning something like that in a Microsoft Word document, for instance, than an exotic one. So Times New Roman and Calibri are good to use. Also, if you're submitting something to a lot of places, having a lot of different fonts and different resumes can get really, really taxing on you. So just stick with one of those fonts is what I would recommend, and just stick with it.
Thank you. So the next question is kind of related to what you just gave in your
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
It says, is it okay to highlight words or titles?
Yes, certain words or certain metrics that you want to showcase that are particularly important. Yes, you can bold them or underline them just to make sure that the reader sees that. I know that when I was reading resumes on search committees, whenever things were in bold, that helped draw my attention to something of importance, so I didn't miss it. Now, you want to be very miserly and very, very Spartan with how you bold things, because you don't want bold, 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 bold. It becomes overwhelming. So make sure that if you do that, you use that very, very carefully, because otherwise it can actually become a distraction rather than something to really highlight. So, but yes, that's okay.
Thank you. The next question is, how many pages should a resume be?
Oh no. I'm laughing because that's probably one of the biggest questions I get. That's one of the first questions when I do things like job clubs and activities. Is how long should my resume be? It should only be a page. Typically, I say like 2 pages is fine. Particularly for workers who have a longer history that they need to highlight. So let's say we cut it off at 17 years. Getting that on one page along with your contact info, your LinkedIn profile, your skills summary, all of those, that's hard to get onto one page without using a teeny tiny font, which you don't want. So you really want to use a font that is readable, a font size that is readable and easy on the eyes. So if it goes onto 2 pages, that's totally fine. I say after 2 pages, you're likely to get a reader who will start to skim. So it may not have as much effect once you get onto page 3. There are some caveats to that. If you're in an academic career or something like that, and you have a CV rather than a resume, those are often 4 or 5 pages. If you're in that field, that's a very specific field. Otherwise, usually I would say 1 to 2 pages is for a resume is right where you want to be.
So you keep answering the next question. So this question is a CV the same as a resume?
Yeah, no, a CV is curriculum vitae, the course of your life. It's an academic document typically. Those have a very, very different format than a resume does. So if you need a CV, I would again make an appointment at your local career force and talk to somebody like myself who can show you what a CV needs to look like versus a resume if that's where you're going with your career.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question is, what about using Indeed for job searches?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, I want you to go to minnesotaworks.net. After this, I know you have one because you registered for this. Um, that is by far the best platform in this state for your job search. And I'll tell you why. One is that we take very good care of that website. So we make sure that when employers are posting positions, they're real positions. They're not just trying to harvest your information. They are real jobs that exist, and you can sort through. The great thing about Minnesota Works, if you don't know how to do this, this is something to ask myself or Lana or somebody at your local career force. You can set up Minnesota Works to run a search and email you a digest once a day, twice a week, 3 times a week, however you want it, where it will do the searching for you. So instead of scrolling all the time, Minnesota Works can actually do the work for you and present you with jobs you can drill down to 5 miles outside of a radius of work all the way to 25 or 50. You can put keywords in, you can narrow by career field, and it's going to pull all of that and present it to you. MinnesotaWorks.net, that's where you want to be for your job search.
Thank you. Next question is, should you always write a cover letter even when they don't ask for one?
If there isn't one required, then I would have what I would call a mother cover letter that you can adapt to each job that you apply for. Um, and um, then you can use it again using the branding so it's consistent across both platforms of the resume and the cover letter. But I would always have one that you can adapt just in case. So being able to use that as kind of your ability to adapt that. Sometimes they won't even allow you to upload a cover letter. It'll be they'll say upload a resume and then it'll just pull off the resume and populate into an application. Some it'll just be the resume. They don't want a cover letter. But I would always just have a cover letter you can adapt just in case because you may find a job you really want to apply for and you want to just be able to adapt quickly and get that application in.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge this question, but I'm
Yeah,
going to redirect them
yeah.
immediately. Someone is asking, can you write off your LinkedIn premium at tax time? Are there other things like interview suits and things of that nature that you can't write off in taxes? Even though I think I low key know the answer, I'm going to refer you to your tax consultant, whoever
Yes.
prepares your taxes.
Yes, 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 yes. We're, we are really good job counselors and job coaches, but we are not accountants or CPAs. So I couldn't answer that. So you'd want to ask the person who prepares your taxes on that score.
And then the next question is, what font size is the minimum or maximum you
So,
recommended?
so it depends on the font that you're choosing because different fonts will take up different amounts of space. I would say 12 is the maximum that you want to go for in a font. I wouldn't go any lower than 11 or 10. It's a narrow band because readability will fall off if you go lower than a 10-point font based on what font you're using. So just be cognizant that you need to be aware, should you choose Times New Roman, that's going to eat up a little bit more space than if you choose like Calibri or a different font. So I would say a band between 10 and 12, and that's where you want to be.
Perfect. I totally agree. There's a statement. I just want to correct
Yeah.
it because everybody can see it. It says CVE is what they refer to in Europe and Canada. In the United States, we say resume. However, the United States does have different occupations that also use CV. For example, professors,
Yep.
doctors, and things of that nature. We do use that term in the United States as well. So
Yep.
let's see here. Okay, someone put in there that there was a link broken, minnesotaworks.net. I'm gonna put my information in the chat. Please contact me and I will look into that.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
And just so you know, when you call the help desk because you can't get into your Minnesota Works account or you need help, there's a real person behind that number and you'll get a hold of them to do that. That's one thing about Minnesota Works that's great, is that there's real people behind that maintaining that website. So that's what we appreciate about that website is there's real human beings working hard to make sure that website works for you.
Thank you. And then the next question is, I'm going to address it though. It says, does
Mhm.
MN Works have remote jobs outside of Minnesota? Minnesota Works. So when we say Minnesota Works, it's extremely important that you spell out Minnesota, MINNESOTAWORKS, Works, Minnesota Works, because MN Works is actually a different website that is not us.
Yes.
Now to answer the question, do we post jobs that are outside of Minnesota? Most jobs are going to be in Minnesota. We do have remote jobs on minnesotaworks.net, but they're mostly geared towards Minnesota because I won't tell you that's a requirement, but they're going to be mostly in Minnesota.
Mhm.
Very rarely will you have one that's outside of Minnesota.
Right. Yeah, there's certain border towns will place them on Minnesota Works. So like Fargo, North Dakota, will put some of those on Minnesota Works because it's right there next to Moorhead, Minnesota, for instance. But there's quite a few. When you're looking for remote, and the great thing about Minnesota Works is you can actually select telework as one of the options as what you're looking for, and it can email you again that email digest of telework options if that's what your goal is.
So now we have some questions in here that's saying, so Indeed or not is not recommended. We didn't say it wasn't recommended. We said that Minnesota Works is great.
Yes, I would say our platform is A plus, and I would use that one before any other.
Then someone says, how should you handle recruiters that may be offshore? Well, with MinnesotaWorks.net, you won't have any offshore recruiters. I can guarantee you that. But I'm gonna have Jason answer that
Yep.
question.
Yep. So I want to be, just as an FYI, this is a very much a buyer beware market. You want to be really careful. Who's contacting you, who's asking for information. So just I really want to emphasize whether they present themselves as a recruiter or how you do, be very guarded with your personal information. And be very careful about that. In MinnesotaWorks.net, your information, you proactively tell employers what information you want to have on there when you create your resume or upload your resume. So, you can create a resume and a profile that's appropriate for what you want. And that can't be pulled off into gosh only knows where. It stays within the ecosystem of Minnesota Works. So just be real careful about anybody that presents themselves in that manner, and just, buyer beware.
So this person is a statement, and she's absolutely correct. You can use, but I'm gonna say you may. You may use more than one platform. She's absolutely,
Hmm.
well, that person, I
Yep.
don't know.
Yep.
It's absolutely correct. You definitely can use more than one platform. And actually, I probably would recommend it because there's others other than the
Hmm.
two that we've aforementioned today.
Yep. Yep, you can. Yep, there's no, yeah, use, particularly when you register for the creative job search, social media and LinkedIn, the person that moderates and the person that facilitates that will talk to you about how to use those platforms as well for your job search. So it's not exclusive. I'm not saying deactivate all your other accounts everywhere else. I would say make sure that when you begin your work in the morning for looking for a new position, MinnesotaWorks.net should be where you land.
So now the next question is, well, I don't know. It's a statement, I believe. A person- Someone said that they have not found a job and that pays well or fits their
Mhm.
skills. And I know you're going to recommend that they contact the career force near them
Yes.
to
Yes.
get a
And and
one-on-one.
and you know what? I'm gonna just pop in the chat because we could probably be here for another hour, and I am cognizant of everybody's time. I'm gonna direct everybody to this URL and take a look um, uh, at careerforcemn.com/events. That has all kinds of services that we provide, whether it is one-on-one individual appointments. My favorite activity, which is called Job Club. I enjoy that tremendously. I do online job clubs and in-person job clubs. It's probably the best part of my job is Job Club. Love it. But all kinds of other activities that you can take advantage of, as well as those like individual appointments to get help with things like resumes or things like that. Salary negotiation is often done in the job interview, that creative job search, because that is often a question that you will confront in a job interview, is the question about your salary expectations. And so just something to be aware of. Is careerforcemn.com/events. Head there and you'll be able to see a whole host of activities and services that you'll be able to pull into and take advantage of. And there's a lot of stuff we do at Career Force, as I mentioned at the beginning, but all kinds of activities like job fairs, employer of the day, where we can bring you into an employer's site for an on-site hiring event, job clubs, as I just mentioned, both in person and online. So take a look at that URL, careerforcemn.com/events, and take advantage of more services because they're there for you, just waiting.
Okay, there are some questions in here, and I don't know if we can do all of these questions in 2
That's
minutes.
okay. We've got,
So,
let's take the 2 minutes. So there, we got it.
okay. Okay, so one question was, I went all the way up to the beginning. One question was about how do you, uh, for websites to look for work outside of Minnesota.
Yep.
Indeed does have jobs
Yeah.
outside of Minnesota.
All.
LinkedIn does
Yeah.
have jobs outside of Minnesota. So there's a lot of them. I see.
And yeah, and every state has a site like Minnesota Works. It's called different things, but all states have a job bank that's in their official state job bank, which is what MinnesotaWorks.net is. But that's where I would go if you're looking at a job, let's say in Idaho or California. They will have official state job banks that you can look at.
Okay. Um, Someone is asking about the creative job search over 50. Should I schedule that session to help with job types or just a general?
Well, I would say if you're concerned about that, for sure register for Creative Job Search Over 50 because that will be very helpful. But that doesn't preclude reaching out to your local career force for more assistance or more help on a one-on-one basis. So the question is both.
Okay, perfect. Uh, Someone saying thank you.
Well, we think we're well, thank you. We're actually this is a great part of our job where we can connect with you guys. So really help. We enjoyed this. So thank you for coming today. So with that, Lana, I will bid you a good morning and hope everyone is doing well. Again, would love to see you at the next creative job search and reach out to your local career force for more assistance should you need it. And like I said, careerforcemn.com/events, a ton of great activities for job seekers out there waiting for you. So have a wonderful afternoon and day, everybody. And we hope to see you at the next creative job search. Take care.